This is a 2008 KTM 450 XCF. I was doing a valve job on it last week and noticed that the cam chain tensioner may be faulty. The cam chain wasn't particularly tight, and on further inspection the tensioner seemed rough and probably faulty and non-functional. This cam chain tensioner works through oil pressure from the oil pump pressing against the cam chain guide on the front side of the engine, which is a little different than the Japanese bikes that tend to operate more mechanically and spring-loaded and from the rear of the engine. So today, my new cam chain tensioner part has arrived. This is a manual tensioner. Rather than replacing with OEM, I went with a manual tensioner, and we're going to replace the OEM tensioner, put this manual tensioner in its place. The first thing I did was pull the inspection plug on the magneto side of the engine, and I did that only because I don't want tension on the cam chain from the lobes contacting the valve buckets. In this particular bike, it may not matter. Again, KTM's a little bit different than the Japanese manufacturers in this regard. Where the Japanese bikes, the cam chain runs straight up through the cylinder and the cylinder head, around the camshafts and back down. In the KTM, the cam chain actually runs right here between two sprockets, two gears, and then the camshafts run off of the upper gear. So the chain itself isn't necessarily directly adversely affected by tension created by the lobes against the buckets from the valves. But nonetheless, wanted to make sure that there was no tension on the cam chain as we pull that off. The cam chain tensioner is located here. We're going to remove that one, do a little bit of inspection, install the new one, and see how she goes. This is, by the way, typically the symptoms include some excessive upper engine rattle and noise from cam chain slop. That's annoying, but more problematic is that if the cam chain starts to slip because it's loose, you'll end up with piston strike against the valves, destroying the valves, potentially the head, and deal with a costly engine rebuild. So we want to keep the cam chain tight. The manual tensioner is a little more comfortable to me at this point. It means that I can check it periodically and easily and know that my cam chain's tight. So let's pull this cam chain tensioner out. We're going to need a 24mm socket. Sometimes you can reach in there with an open end wrench. And the outer portion is a 17mm to pull the tensioner out of its little container. I'll zoom in here and get a better view. All right. Now we may just figure that the wrench in. All right, so if we pop this off first, jar it loose. From there, it's not difficult to pull. There will likely be some oil residue here. Again, it's driven by pressure from the oil pump, as we'll see after we get the thing out of here. We should expect to have just a little bit of oil potentially dripping out of here. Shouldn't be substantial. Notice there is a copper crush washer right there in the enclosure mechanism. Here's the actual tensioner. Let me take just a little bit of persuasion. There's an O-ring in there that seals it up. Mostly that's what's making it tight, so I just need a little more traction. There we go. And the oil's doing its job, making things slippery, so I still can't grab it. O-ring tensioner. It does. It looks to be in better positioning than it was the last time I had it out. It actually feels better than the last time.